A string is a text value. We already saw an example of this in the Hello World program. The phrase Hello World is a string. The quotation marks around this phrase are essential. Without them, this would not be a string. You may recall from the previous video that there was a difference between doing a console log of x with or without quotation marks. Without quotation marks, x is treated as a variable name, and the value of that variable is what gets outputted to the console. When we put quotation marks around x, that turns it into a string, and the letter x is outputted to the console instead of its value, which is the number 5. Let's look at another example. We haven't covered math yet, but addition is simple, so I will show you an example with addition. This code outputs 12 because the mathematical expression 5 plus 7 gets evaluated, and the result is what the console log operates on. If we put quotation marks around that, the output is 5 plus 7. The expression doesn't get evaluated because it is a string and not a mathematical expression anymore. This illustrates an important point about strings. If we want text to just be text and to not get interpreted in some other way, then that text has to be a string. Variables can hold string values, so we can rewrite the Hello World program like this. Note that const could have been used instead of let. The choice depends on if you intend to allow the value of greeting to change. One way to make a string is by placing quotation marks around the text. It is common to refer to regular quotation marks in JavaScript as double quotes, because JavaScript also uses apostrophes to create strings, and they are referred to as single quotes when used in this way. We can rewrite the Hello World program using single quotes. This produces the exact same output as using double quotes. Single quotes can also be used when defining a string variable. The choice between using single or double quotes is mostly a matter of personal preference, but that choice does make a difference when you want to encode a quotation mark or apostrophe inside of a string. My editor is showing multiple warnings and errors for this code because a string that begins with a quotation mark is automatically ended by the next quotation mark that appears in the code. This code is actually interpreted as two separate strings with some nonsense in between, because we have two groups of text that are fully surrounded by quotation marks and some additional text that is not surrounded by a pair of matching quotation marks. This code can be easily fixed by using single quotes to define the string. The reason that this works is because a string that starts with a single quote can only be ended by another single quote, so the double quote neither ends the current string nor starts a new one. We have a similar issue if we try to use an apostrophe in a string that is defined using single quotes. My editor again has a lot of warnings and errors, and this code cannot run. This code is interpreted as having one string and a bunch of nonsense after it. The one string contains only John. The apostrophe ends the string, and everything after it doesn't make any sense as JavaScript code. This code can be easily fixed by using double quotes. The reason that this works is because a string that starts with a double quote can only be ended by another double quote. The apostrophe neither ends the string nor starts a new one. It is possible to use a quote inside a string defined using double quotes, and it is also possible to use an apostrophe inside a string defined using single quotes. This requires a technique known as escaping. This is accomplished by using the / character immediately before the quote or apostrophe. Notice that there are no warnings or errors, and the output doesn't show the slashes. If you actually wanted to show the slashes, those slashes also have to be escaped with other slashes. This code uses two slashes, but only one appears in the output. The first slash is an escape character used to indicate that the slash following it is a normal slash and not a special character being used to escape something else. If you wanted to output a double slash, you would actually need 4 slashes in your code. Each slash that you want to appear has to be escaped by another slash that does not appear. So if you want a double slash, you need 4 slashes, 1 extra for each of the 2 slashes that you want to appear. It is up to you to decide if you want to escape quotation marks and apostrophes or just switch between using single quotes and double quotes to avoid the need for escape. However, you cannot avoid escapes entirely. The / always needs an escape regardless of your choice between single and double quotes for defining the string. There are some other characters that require escapes. The most commonly used are for the tab, which is /t, and new line character, which is /n. Escapes are also used for Unicode characters. There are a few different ways to escape Unicode characters, but this one using the /u and braces is the most versatile. The others only work for a limited set of characters. To use this method, find the code number for the character that you want to use. It must be in hexadecimal format. You don't need to fully understand what that means. Just find a code for the character, which usually is a combination of regular numbers plus the letters A through F. Put that code between the braces and you'll have an escaped Unicode character. If the code that you find begins with U+, remove that part of the code. Also note that the U after the slash must be lowercase. It won't work if you capitalize it. In addition to defining strings with single quotes and double quotes, there is a third way using backticks. On a US keyboard, this is the key right below the escape key. We can also rewrite the hello world program using backticks. In this code, the backticks function exactly the same as when using single quotes or double quotes. However, there are some notable differences in how strings work when they're defined using backticks. If I move part of the string to the next line of my code, the line break gets encoded into the string. Attempting to do this with single quotes or double quotes will result in an error. This is useful if you're copying lengthy text comprised of multiple paragraphs. You won't need to manually add all the line break characters. Another useful capability of strings defined with backticks is the ability to embed variables and expressions inside of the string. This code outputs hello Bob, and the technique is known as string interpolation. The $ coupled with braces allow a variable or expression to be embedded into a string. Here is an example with an expression. This outputs 5 plus 7 equals 12. The text preceding the $ is ordinary text that is outputted verbatim. The expression between the braces is a mathematical expression, and it gets evaluated because it is between braces that have a $ immediately to the left of the opening brace. If I use single or double quotes, it won't work. This code outputs 3 lines. Only the first one actually computes the result of 5 plus 7, and that's because the first one came from a string defined using backticks. The other two just show the string interpolation code as ordinary text. If you actually wanted the first one to have the same output as the other two, it would be necessary to escape the $ with a slash. Regular $ that are not accompanied by braces do not need to be escaped, so we can write out currency values without escaping. If you want to combine a visible $ with string interpolation, use 2 consecutive $. The first $ is the ordinary dollar that is displayed, and the second one works together with the braces to do the interpolation. It is possible to use string interpolation multiple times within the same string. It is also possible to assign the result to a variable. Note that all the variables used in the string interpolation must be declared and initialized before they are used in the interpolation. If I move any of these declarations after the string interpolation code, this won't work and I get an error message about accessing before initialization. There is an alternative to string interpolation that is known as concatenation. The plus sign combines strings together into a single string. Note that this does not modify the original strings, it just produces a new one. Also note that it was necessary to add the space after the comma. Spaces do not get added automatically by the process of concatenation. If I remove the space from this code, the space is also absent in the resulting output. For comparison, let's also look at the string interpolation version of this same code. We now get the exact same output twice. The first one is from concatenation and the second one is from string interpolation. The main functional difference is that string interpolation allows you to embed a string in any position within another string, whereas concatenation only allows adding a string to the end of another string. You may have noticed that the plus sign is used both for mathematical addition and for string concatenation. This leads to the question of what happens when you use a plus sign with a number on one side and a string on the other side. This is something that is not permitted in many programming languages, but it is allowed in JavaScript, and it can be a source of much confusion. I recommend not mixing the two until you learn how to determine what the outcome should be. We will cover that in a future video. We saw that converting a mathematical expression into a string prevents it from being evaluated mathematically. There are some situations in which you may want to write something in your code that isn't evaluated as anything at all, not even as a text value. We will explore this topic in the next video and also discuss why being able to do this is important.